In this video, we're going to talk about application folder structure. It's a very important subject, especially when you're working with enterprise scaled applications. The folder structures and where your files are in and what those files are named is critically important, because if you do this wrong, actually maintaining the project becomes a nightmare. And added to that, if you follow non-standard paradigms, when other developers come in on your project, they don't know what on earth is going on. And then there are also certain industry standard names that you have to follow. Otherwise, your web server just doesn't know what on earth you're trying to do. So I'm going to use this application template as an example of how a folder structure should look like, what the naming conventions are, how the stuff fits in. And every single project that you start should start off with a proper naming convention and a proper folder structure. If you don't do that right from the beginning, the entire project is in jeopardy because it just becomes a soup of chaos. Let's start by considering this URL. So I've got http 127.0.0.1.8,000, so my local machine. I'm not specifying what the HTML file is that it should use when opening this up. When I go to that URL, what it does is load up for me the index.html file. So if I just quickly do an empty cache and hard reload here, you'll see there's my index.js file. And all of the other files get loaded based on what is happening on the index.html file. Let's go rename the index.html file to something else, something non-standard, and let's just go and see what this is going to do. So we're going to rename this to, let's say, my index.html. And we'll do the refactor, and we'll go back to our web page. We'll take the welcome out and refresh it. And now you can see, oh crikey, why doesn't it load the right file? Well, because you broke standard. My index is not a known file. Index.html is. So when you start off a project, you need to start off with index.html because that's the starting point that the server is going to look for to start the application when you type in the URL. If you have need for index.js file, then use the index.js file. The JavaScript file name and the HTML file name, if there's an association between the two files, they need to have the same name. Don't forget your fav icon. A fav icon is also required for your web hosting. The package.json is not required. That's for node modules. The readme is for GitHub. So those aren't required files for your project to be hosting it, but for your source control and for your node modules, it is required. Then you'll see that I've got a test folder. In the test folder, I have my test files. This won't be deployed with the project, but this is where I'll be writing my tests. All my styles go into the styles folder. Don't go and create randomly named folders with CSS files in it. The styles folder has been an industry standard for many decades. Just use it as it is. The source folder, that's up for grabs. Some people have different names for it. Source is the standard that I use. It keeps it nice and clean, and those are generally utility files and libraries and things that I want to use. The packages folder is a folder that has third-party packages in that I use. The components folder is where I put all of my web components in it. The build folder is where all my build scripts are in, and the app folder is the folder that contains all of my page views. Each page has an HTML file and a JavaScript file, and they are associated with each other inside the same folder and has the same name. So because everything follows the naming or follows the standard naming convention, because all the stuff that is related together is packed together, because the names describe to you exactly what the purpose of this folder is. It's really easy to maintain, it's really easy to extend, and having a neatly designed application structure is critical for web applications. You'll notice here that the application folder has a root folder. This is my root folder. So if I go to my Explorer, this will be the folder that my application sits in. I don't reference files outside of my root folder. Everything that the application needs must be in the root folder, and the root folder must contain your index.html file and your index.js file. From there, you can opt into other folders to extend your application structure. So in the summary, self-contain your application on the root folder. The root folder must contain your index.html file. The styles is an industry standard folder name where you put your CSS in. All the other folder names is up for grabs. Just make sure that the name makes logical sense as to what you will find inside that folder.